The rain hammered against the tinted windows of the black SUV as it carved through the slick streets of Detroit's East Side. Marcus Daniels sat in the back seat, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the blur of neon signs and shadowed alleys that painted the city in shades of danger and opportunity. At 38, Marcus had built an empire from nothing, an empire that thrived in the margins where law feared to tread. The Daniels organization controlled everything from the docks to the underground gambling circuits, and his name alone could silence a room or start a war. "Boss, we're 5 minutes out from the Velvet Room," said Darius, his most trusted lieutenant, glancing at Marcus through the rearview mirror. Darius had been with him since the beginning, back when they were just two kids from the projects with more ambition than sense. Now Darius was the enforcer, the man who made sure Marcus's orders were executed without question. Marcus nodded but said nothing. Tonight was supposed to be routine, a meeting with the Italian syndicate to finalize a lucrative arms deal that would expand their reach into the Midwest, but something felt off. The air was thick with tension, the kind that settled in your bones before a storm. He'd learned long ago to trust his instincts. They'd kept him alive when others had fallen. The SUV pulled up to the Velvet Room, an upscale lounge that served as neutral ground for the city's underworld elite. Red carpet led to glass doors guarded by men in tailored suits, their eyes cold and assessing. Marcus stepped out, adjusting his charcoal suit jacket, the rain immediately dotting his shoulders. Darius and two other men flanked him as they moved toward the entrance. Inside, the lounge was a study in controlled chaos. Crystal chandeliers cast amber light over leather booths where deals were whispered and fortunes changed hands. Jazz music drifted through the air, a smooth contrast to the violent world it masked. Marcus spotted Vincent Rossi at a corner booth, the Italian boss lounging with the ease of a man who believed himself untouchable. Two of his men stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes tracking Marcus's approach. "Marcus, my friend." Vincent rose, extending a hand adorned with gold rings. His smile was wide, but his eyes were calculating. "Right on time. I appreciate punctuality in business." "Vincent," Marcus shook his hand, firm but brief. "Let's not waste each other's time." "You have what I need?" Vincent gestured to the booth. "Always straight to business, I respect that." Sit. We'll discuss terms over drinks." Marcus slid into the booth, Darius positioning himself just behind, a silent sentinel. Vincent snapped his fingers and a waitress appeared. A young woman with dark hair pulled back, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. She set down a bottle of aged whiskey and 2 glasses. "Only the best for this occasion," Vincent said, pouring generously. He pushed a glass toward Marcus. "To new partnerships and profitable ventures." Marcus reached for the glass, but something stopped him. A sensation, subtle, barely there, like a whisper at the edge of consciousness. He paused, his fingers hovering over the crystal. Vincent's smile didn't waver, but there was something in the stillness of the moment that felt wrong. Before Marcus could lift the glass, he felt it, a slight weight in his jacket pocket that hadn't been there before. His hand moved instinctively, sliding into the pocket. His fingers closed around a folded piece of paper. He pulled it out slowly, keeping his expression neutral even as confusion flickered through his mind. The note was small, plain white paper with neat handwriting in black ink. "Don't drink tonight." Marcus's blood turned cold. His eyes flicked up to Vincent, whose smile had frozen slightly, confusion creeping into his features. "Something wrong, Marcus?" Marcus studied the note again, then glanced around the room. Who had slipped this into his pocket? When? His mind raced through the past hour, the drive over, stepping out of the SUV, entering the lounge. No one had gotten close enough, no one except. His gaze shifted to the waitress, now standing near the bar, her back to him as she spoke quietly with another server. Something about her posture, controlled, deliberate, caught his attention. "Marcus?" Vincent's voice pulled him back, edged with impatience now. Marcus folded the note carefully and slipped it back into his pocket. He picked up the glass, swirling the amber liquid, watching it catch the light. Then he set it down without drinking. "I'm good. Let's talk numbers first." Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't trust my hospitality?" "I don't trust anyone," Marcus said flatly. "That's why I'm still breathing." A tense silence settled over the booth. Vincent leaned back, his smile returning but colder now. "Smart man. Very well, we'll discuss terms, but Marcus..." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "In my world, refusing a drink can be seen as an insult. I hope you understand that." "I understand a lot of things, Vincent." Marcus's tone was ice, including when someone's playing games. Vincent's expression darkened, but before he could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Shouting, The crash of glass, then gunfire. Sharp cracks that shattered the lounge's facade of civility. People screamed, diving for cover. Marcus was on his feet instantly, Darius pulling him back as bullets tore through the air. "Move! Now!" Darius barked, shoving Marcus toward the back exit. Vincent's men had drawn weapons, returning fire toward the entrance where masked figures advanced with automatic rifles. Marcus's mind was a whirlwind. This wasn't random. This was planned. And that note. Someone had known. Someone had warned him. They burst through the back door into an alley slick with rain and garbage. The SUV screeched around the corner and they piled in, tires spinning as they tore away from the chaos. Marcus's heart pounded, adrenaline surging. Behind them, the sound of gunfire faded into the night. "What the hell was that?" Darius demanded, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Marcus pulled the note from his pocket again, staring at the words, "Don't drink tonight." If he'd taken that drink, if he'd been distracted for even a moment longer, those bullets would have found him. Whoever wrote this had saved his life. "Find out who she was," Marcus said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "The waitress. Dark hair, young, worked the bar tonight. I want to know everything about her." Darius frowned. "You think she's involved? I think she's the only reason I'm not dead." Marcus's eyes were hard, his mind already working through the implications. Someone had infiltrated his world, slipped past his defenses and left a warning. That kind of boldness was either insanity or brilliance, and Marcus Daniels needed to know which. The safe house was a nondescript brick building in the industrial district, wedged between abandoned warehouses and rusting machinery. Marcus had owned it for years, one of a dozen properties scattered across the city that existed off the books, invisible to law enforcement and rival organizations alike. Inside, the space was sparse but functional, reinforced steel doors, surveillance monitors covering every angle, and enough firepower to wage a small war. Marcus stood before a wall of screens watching footage from the Velvet Room play on loop. Darius worked the keyboard, rewinding and enhancing frames, searching for answers. The attack had been swift and brutal. 6 masked gunmen had stormed the entrance, targeting Vincent's men specifically. 3 of the Italians were dead, 2 wounded. Vincent himself had escaped through a side exit, but his pride had taken a bigger hit than his body. "There," Marcus said, pointing to a frame. "Zoom in on her." Darius isolated the image. The waitress appeared on screen, moving through the lounge minutes before the shooting started. Her movements were efficient, deliberate. She'd approached Marcus's booth, set down the drinks, then retreated to the bar. But there was something else, a subtle gesture as she'd passed his table, her hand brushing near his jacket. "That's when she planted the note," Darius muttered. "Bold move. Professional. Too professional," Marcus said. His instincts were screaming now. This wasn't some random act of conscience. Whoever this woman was, she'd calculated every move, anticipated every variable. "Run her face through our database. Check with our contacts at the DMV, social services, everywhere. I want a name." Darius nodded, already typing. What if she's working for someone? The Russians? The cartel? Marcus considered this. The attack had all the hallmarks of a coordinated hit, but the note complicated things. If she was part of the assassination attempt, why warn him? If she wasn't, how did she know about the poison? Because he was certain now that whiskey had been meant to kill him. Vincent's insistence, the timing of the attack, it all pointed to a setup. "She's not with them," Marcus said finally. "If she was, I'd be dead. She had opportunity. She had access. But she warned me instead. So what's her angle?" "That's what we're going to find out." The computer beeped. Darius leaned forward, scanning the results. Got something. Facial recognition pulled a hit from a grocery store security camera, east side, dated 3 days ago. Cross-referenced with employment records. He paused, reading. Grace Morrison, 29 years old. Single mother, 1 daughter, age 7. Works 2 jobs, daycare assistant and part-time catering, which explains how she got into the Velvet Room tonight. Marcus absorbed this information. Grace Morrison. The name didn't ring any bells, didn't connect to any known players in the underworld. A daycare assistant, a mother. This was getting stranger by the minute. "Address?" Marcus asked. "Run-down apartment complex on Lenox Avenue. Not exactly prime real estate." Darius looked up. "You thinking of paying her a visit?" "I'm thinking I need answers, and she's the only one who has them." Darius hesitated. "Boss, this could be a trap. She could be bait, drawing you out. Then we'll be ready." Marcus checked his weapon. a Glock 19 that had been with him through countless close calls. Get the car. We move in 20 minutes. Lenox Avenue was a different world from the marble and chrome of Marcus's usual territory. Here, streetlights flickered or didn't work at all, casting the neighborhood in perpetual twilight. Graffiti covered brick walls, and the few people on the streets moved quickly, heads down, minding their own business. This was a place where people survived, not thrived. The apartment complex was a 4-story building with peeling paint and narrow balconies cluttered with laundry lines and broken furniture. Marcus and Darius approached on foot, leaving the SUV 2 blocks away with their backup team on standby. They'd changed into less conspicuous clothing, dark jeans, leather jackets, nothing that screamed organized crime. 3rd floor, apartment 3C, Darius said, checking his phone. Lights are on. They climbed the external stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. The air smelled of cooking grease and mildew. Somewhere above, a baby cried. Marcus felt out of place here, disconnected from the poverty that had once defined his own childhood. He'd clawed his way out of neighborhoods like this, built walls of money and power to ensure he'd never return. Yet here he was, chasing a woman who'd saved his life from a world she shouldn't even know existed. At apartment 3C, Marcus paused, listening. Inside, he could hear movement, soft footsteps, the murmur of a television. He knocked, 3 firm raps that echoed down the corridor. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then, a woman's voice, cautious. Who is it? Grace Morrison? Marcus kept his voice even, non-threatening. I need to talk to you. It's about tonight. Another pause. He heard a chain rattle. Then the door cracked open, held by a security chain. A woman's face appeared in the gap. Dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, brown skin pulled tight with exhaustion and something else. Fear? No, not quite. Wariness? Recognition. You? She whispered. Me? Marcus confirmed. Can I come in? I promise, I just want to talk. Grace's eyes flicked to Darius, assessing the threat, then back to Marcus. You shouldn't be here. I know, but you put a note in my pocket tonight, and I need to understand why. For a moment, he thought she might slam the door. But then something shifted in her expression. Resignation, maybe, or the weight of inevitability. She closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it wider. 5 minutes, she said. Then you leave. Marcus entered, Darius following and closing the door behind them. The apartment was small, a cramped living room with a worn couch and mismatched furniture, a kitchenette visible through a doorway, and a narrow hallway leading to what he assumed were bedrooms. Children's drawings covered one wall, bright crayon images of flowers and sunshine that stood in stark contrast to the grim reality outside. Grace stood with her arms crossed, defensive but not backing down. She was smaller than he'd realized, maybe 5'5", but there was a strength in the way she held herself. How did you find me? I have resources, Marcus said simply. The real question is, how did you know about tonight, about the drink? Grace's jaw tightened. I work catering sometimes. Extra money. They called me in last minute for the Velvet Room. I was in the kitchen when I overheard 2 men talking, Italians by their accents. They were laughing about how someone named Marcus was going to drink his last tonight. They mentioned poison in the whiskey bottle, said it was untraceable, that you'd be dead before anyone knew what happened. Marcus felt a cold fury building. Vincent, that smiling snake, had tried to kill him at his own table, under the pretense of partnership. Why warn me? You don't know me. You could have walked away. Grace met his eyes, unflinching. Because I've seen enough people die in this city, and because... She hesitated, then continued, her voice harder. Because men like Vincent Rossi think they're untouchable. They think they can do whatever they want, hurt whoever they want, and no one will stop them. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of people like you and him deciding who lives and who dies. People like me? Marcus's voice was dangerously soft. Don't pretend you're different. Grace shot back. I know who you are, Marcus Daniels. Everyone in this city knows. You run the streets, you control the drugs, the guns, the violence. You're just as bad as Rossi. Maybe worse, because at least he doesn't pretend to be anything else. Darius tensed, his hand moving toward his weapon, but Marcus raised a hand, stopping him. There was something raw and honest in Grace's anger, something that cut through the layers of justification Marcus had built around his life. She wasn't wrong. He was a criminal, a killer, a man who'd built his empire on blood and fear, but she'd still saved him. You're brave, Marcus said quietly. Or stupid. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Grace's voice cracked slightly. I did what I thought was right, now you know, so leave. Go back to your world and forget you ever came here. Marcus studied her for a long moment. In the other room, he could hear the soft sound of a child's breathing. Her daughter, asleep, unaware that her mother had just put a target on their backs. Because that's what Grace had done, whether she realized it or not. Vincent would eventually figure out how Marcus had avoided the poison. And when he did, he'd look for whoever had interfered. You're in danger, Marcus said. Vincent will find out you warned me. And when he does, I can take care of myself. Can you? Marcus gestured toward the hallway. Can you protect your daughter when Rossi's men come knocking? Because they will, this isn't over. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Grace's face. What are you saying? I'm saying you saved my life tonight. And whether you like it or not, that makes you my responsibility now. Marcus pulled a card from his pocket, blank except for a phone number. You call this number if anything happens, anything. You see suspicious cars, unfamiliar faces you call, understand? Grace stared at the card like it was a snake. I don't want your protection. Too bad. You have it anyway. Marcus moved toward the door, Darius opening it. He paused at the threshold, looking back at her. Grace Morrison, you just stepped into a war you don't understand. But I'm going to make sure you survive it. He left before she could respond, descending the stairs with Darius at his side. As they walked back to the SUV, Darius spoke. Boss, taking on a civilian as a responsibility. She's not just a civilian anymore. Marcus interrupted. She's leverage. Vincent will use her to get to me if he figures this out. We keep her alive, we keep the advantage. But even as he said it, Marcus knew there was more to it than strategy. Grace Morrison had looked him in the eye and called him out for what he was. She'd risked everything to do the right thing in a world where right and wrong had long since blurred into shades of gray. And something about that, about her, had gotten under his skin in a way nothing had in years. This was going to get complicated. 3 days passed like a held breath. Marcus had positioned surveillance teams around Grace's apartment building, discreet, invisible to the untrained eye, but ready to move at the first sign of trouble. So far, nothing. No Italian cars cruising the block. No unfamiliar faces asking questions at the local bodega. The calm should have been reassuring, but it only made Marcus more uneasy. Vincent Rossi wasn't the type to let an assassination attempt fail without consequences. He was planning something. Marcus sat in his downtown penthouse office, a converted loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Detroit River. The space was minimalist. Dark leather furniture, a mahogany desk, abstract art on exposed brick walls. Everything designed to project power and control. But tonight, control felt like an illusion. Darius entered without knocking, his expression grim. We've got a problem. Marcus looked up from the reports scattered across his desk. Talk to me. Vincent's been making moves. He met with the Kozlov brothers yesterday, the Russian crew that's been pushing into our territory on the west side. 2 hours later, he sat down with Carlos Mendoza from the cartel. Whatever he's planning, he's building alliances. Marcus's jaw tightened. The Kozlovs were brutal but pragmatic, willing to work with anyone if the price was right. Mendoza was more calculating, but the cartel had been eyeing Detroit's distribution networks for months. If Vincent was pulling them together, it meant he was preparing for something big. A coordinated attack on the Daniels organization would stretch Marcus's resources thin, force him to fight on multiple fronts. He's not going after Grace, Marcus said, thinking aloud. He's going after me directly. Using her was too subtle for Vincent. He wants a war. Then we give him one, Darius said, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. We hit his operations first, catch him off guard. Marcus shook his head. That's what he wants. He's baiting us into overreacting, making us look like the aggressors. That way the other families see us as the problem, not him. We need to be smarter. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then answered. Yes? Mr. Daniels? A woman's voice tense and breathless. Grace. Marcus was on his feet instantly. What's wrong? There's someone outside my apartment, a man sitting in a car across the street. He's been there for an hour just watching. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but you said to call. What kind of car? Marcus was already moving, grabbing his jacket and signaling to Darius. Black sedan, I can't see the plates from here. Lock your doors, don't open them for anyone, we're 10 minutes away. Marcus ended the call and headed for the elevator, Darius right behind him. Get our team on Lenox Avenue activated. Now. The drive to Grace's neighborhood felt like an eternity, even though they made it in 8 minutes. Marcus's mind raced through scenarios, each one worse than the last. If Vincent had found Grace, if he'd connected her to the failed poisoning, she and her daughter were in immediate danger. The thought of that little girl, innocent, asleep in her bed, caught in the crossfire of his world, made something twist in Marcus's chest. They arrived to find the black sedan still parked across from the apartment building. Marcus recognized the make, a Chrysler 300, common enough in Detroit but favored by certain criminal elements for its anonymity. The windows were tinted, but he could make out a silhouette in the driver's seat. Could be surveillance, Darius muttered. Or a scout, checking if she's home before they make a move. Marcus pulled his weapon, keeping it concealed beneath his jacket. Only one way to find out. They approached from opposite sides, boxing the sedan in. Marcus reached the driver's window and rapped on it with his knuckles, hard enough to make his intentions clear. For a moment nothing happened. Then the window rolled down, revealing a man in his 30s with a sharp suit and sharper eyes. Not Italian, not Russian, something else. "Help you?" the man asked, his voice casual but his body language tense. "You've been sitting outside this building for an hour," Marcus said. "Care to explain why?" The man's eyes flicked to Darius, then back to Marcus. Recognition dawned, followed by carefully controlled fear. "Mr. Daniels, I didn't realize this was your territory. Everything in this city is my territory. Who sent you?" "No one sent me. I'm a private investigator, surveillance job." He reached slowly into his jacket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. Inside was a PI license, legitimate as far as Marcus could tell. "I'm working a child custody case, following the mother's boyfriend, not the woman in 3C. Marcus studied him, reading the micro-expressions, the nervous sweat on his brow despite the cool night air. The man was lying about something, but maybe not everything. "Show me your case file." "I don't have to." "Show me, or I make a phone call and you spend the next 48 hours answering questions in a basement you'll never leave." The investigator's Adam's apple bobbed. He reached into the back seat slowly, producing a manila folder. Marcus flipped it open, scanning the contents. Photos of a man and woman arguing outside a different apartment building. Court documents. Nothing that mentioned Grace Morrison or apartment 3C, but the man's hands were shaking. "Get out of here," Marcus said, handing back the folder. "And don't come back to this street, ever." The investigator didn't need to be told twice. He started the engine and pulled away, tires squealing slightly in his haste. Marcus watched until the taillights disappeared, his instincts still screaming that something was off. "You believe him?" Darius asked. "No, but he's not the real threat. He's too scared, too small time." Marcus looked up at the apartment building, spotting Grace's window, the lights still on, a shadow moving behind the curtains. Someone hired him, though. Someone wanted eyes on this building. They climbed the stairs to 3C. This time, Grace opened the door immediately, her face pale but composed. "Was that taken care of?" Marcus said, stepping inside. "But we need to talk." Grace nodded, leading them into the living room. She'd changed since he'd last seen her. Jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the catering uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable. But her eyes were still sharp, still defiant. "This is getting out of hand," she said quietly. "I can't live like this, jumping at every shadow, wondering if today's the day someone comes after me or Lily." "Lily?" Marcus asked. "My daughter." Grace gestured toward the hallway. "She's 7. She doesn't understand why I'm suddenly paranoid, why I won't let her play outside. How do I explain that I'm caught in some mob war because I tried to save someone's life?" The pain in her voice was raw, genuine. Marcus had spent years insulating himself from guilt, from the collateral damage of his choices. But standing here, seeing the fear in Grace's eyes, the children's drawings on the wall, the half-eaten bowl of cereal on the coffee table, it cracked something open inside him. "You don't explain," Marcus said. "You survive. And then, when this is over, you go back to your life." "Will it ever be over?" Grace challenged. "Men like Vincent don't forget, and from what I've learned about you, neither do you." Marcus couldn't argue with that. "I'm moving you, tonight, both of you, to a secure location where Vincent can't touch you." "No." Grace's response was immediate, firm. "I'm not running. This is my home. Lily's school is 3 blocks away. My job's my life. It's all here. I won't let you uproot us because you're at war with some Italian gangster. You don't have a choice." "I always have a choice." Grace stepped closer, her voice dropping but intensifying. "You're used to people doing what you say because they're afraid of you. I'm not. I'm afraid for my daughter, for what might happen if I stay. But I'm more afraid of what happens if I let men like you control my life. I saved you because it was the right thing to do, but I won't become your puppet." The silence that followed was charged, electric. Darius shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to anyone speaking to Marcus this way. But Marcus found himself impressed. Grace Morrison had more courage than half the men in his organization. She was staring down a monster and refusing to blink. "Then we do this differently," Marcus said finally. "I station security outside 24/7. You go about your normal routine, but you're never alone. Anyone approaches you, anyone asks questions, my people intervene. Non-negotiable." Grace considered this, her arms still crossed. "Your security won't scare my daughter? They'll be invisible, she won't even know they're there. And if Vincent figures out what you're doing, won't that just confirm his suspicions about me? Let me worry about Vincent." Marcus pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "Right now, I need you to trust that I know how to handle this situation." "Trust?" Grace laughed bitterly. "You're a criminal. You've probably killed more people than I can count. Why would I trust you? Because 3 days ago, you trusted your instincts enough to warn me about that drink. And your instincts were right." Marcus held her gaze. "I'm not asking you to like me, Grace. I'm asking you to let me keep you alive." Before Grace could respond, a crash echoed from down the hallway, the sound of breaking glass. Both Marcus and Darius drew their weapons instantly, moving toward the sound. Grace's face went white. Lily's room? Marcus was already running. He burst through the door to find a child's bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals. A small bed where a little girl sat up, eyes wide with shock. The window was shattered, glass scattered across the carpet. And on the bed, inches from the girl's pillow, was a brick wrapped in paper. Marcus grabbed Lily, shielding her with his body as Darius scanned the window for threats. Grace rushed in, taking her daughter from Marcus's arms, checking her for injuries. "Baby, are you okay? Did you get cut?" "I'm fine, Mama," Lily whispered, her voice shaking. Someone threw something. Marcus picked up the brick, carefully unwrapping the paper. It was a message, written in the same block letters as before, but this time the tone was different. "You chose the wrong side. Both of you will pay." Grace read over his shoulder, her breathing ragged. "Oh God, they know. They know I warned you." Marcus crumpled the note in his fist, rage burning through him like wildfire. Vincent had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Threatening Grace was one thing. Threatening a child was something else entirely. "Pack a bag," Marcus said, his voice cold and final. "Both of you, you're coming with me. Now." This time, Grace didn't argue. The safe house was in Bloomfield Hills, an affluent suburb 20 miles north of Detroit's chaos. The property sat behind iron gates and mature oak trees, a 2-story colonial with cream-colored siding and black shutters. It looked like any other upper-middle-class home on the tree-lined street, which was exactly the point. No one would think to look for a crime lord's protected witnesses in a neighborhood where soccer moms drove Range Rovers and hedge fund managers jogged at dawn. Marcus led Grace and Lily inside, Darius securing the perimeter with 4 additional men positioned around the property. The interior was tastefully furnished. Leather sofas, a stone fireplace, a kitchen with granite countertops. Comfortable but not ostentatious. A place designed to blend in. Lily clung to her mother's hand, her eyes darting around nervously. She was a small girl with her mother's dark eyes and a spray of freckles across her nose. She wore pajamas covered in cartoon unicorns and clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Despite the terror of the night, she was trying to be brave, her chin lifted in a way that reminded Marcus painfully of Grace. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Marcus said, keeping his voice gentle. "You and Lily can take the master. It's got its own bathroom, plenty of space." Grace nodded stiffly, her protective instincts clearly on overdrive. She hadn't let go of Lily since they'd left the apartment. "How long do we have to stay here?" "Until I neutralize the threat." Marcus met her eyes. "A few days at most." "And what does neutralize mean exactly?" Grace's voice was sharp. "Are you going to kill Vincent Rossi?" Marcus glanced at Lily, who was watching him with unnerving intensity for a 7-year-old. "Let's get you both settled first. We can talk logistics later." He showed them upstairs, opening the master bedroom door to reveal a spacious room with a king-size bed, an armchair by the window, and soft carpet. Grace set down the hastily packed duffel bag, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion and stress. "Mama, I'm hungry," Lily whispered. Grace closed her eyes briefly, and Marcus saw the weight of everything crashing down on her. The danger, the displacement, the responsibility of keeping her daughter safe in a situation that was spiraling out of control. "I'll make something," Marcus said. "What does she like?" Grace looked at him surprised. "You cook?" "I know my way around a kitchen." It was true. Before the empire, before the money and power, Marcus had been a kid who learned to feed himself when his mother worked 3 jobs. Those skills never left you. "Mac and cheese okay?" Lily's face brightened slightly. "With the dinosaur shapes?" Despite everything, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch. "I'll see what I can do." 20 minutes later, they sat around the kitchen island, an unlikely trio bound together by violence and circumstance. Lily ate her mac and cheese quietly, occasionally glancing at Marcus like he was some kind of dangerous animal she couldn't quite figure out. Grace picked at a sandwich Marcus had made, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Why are you doing this?" Grace asked suddenly. "You could just eliminate the threat to yourself and walk away. Why protect us?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "You saved my life. That creates a debt. So this is about honor?" Grace's tone was skeptical. "The gangster's code? Call it what you want. I don't leave loose ends, and I don't abandon people who've put themselves at risk for me." Marcus paused. "And I don't let children become collateral damage if I can help it." Grace studied him, her expression softening slightly. "You weren't always this, were you? A criminal? A killer?" "No." Marcus looked down at his hands that had pulled triggers, signed death warrants, built an empire on broken laws and broken bodies. "Once I was just a kid trying to survive. Then I made choices. Some good, most bad. And those choices led me here. Do you regret it?" It was a question no one had asked him in years. Most people in his world didn't have the luxury of regret. You did what you had to do and you lived with the consequences. But sitting here, watching a little girl eat dinosaur-shaped pasta while her mother tried to process being dragged into a war she never asked for, Marcus felt something he'd buried long ago. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but regret doesn't change the past. It just weighs you down." "Mama," Lily said suddenly, breaking the heavy moment, "is Mr. Marcus going to keep us safe from the bad men?" Grace's eyes met Marcus's, and in that look was a question, a challenge, and a desperate hope all at once. "Yes, baby, he is." "Promise?" Lily turned to Marcus, her dark eyes serious. Marcus had made a lot of promises in his life. Most of them were lies or half-truths, tools to manipulate or control. But looking at this child, this innocent girl who'd been terrorized because of his world, he felt the weight of a different kind of promise, one that actually meant something. "I promise," he said. "No one will hurt you or your mom while I'm around." Lily smiled, small and tentative but real. "Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcus." After Lily went upstairs to sleep, Grace and Marcus sat in the living room, the silence stretching between them. Outside, the suburban night was quiet, except for the occasional passing car and the rustle of wind through the oaks. It felt like a different universe from the violence that had shattered Grace's apartment window just hours ago. "I need to know what you're planning," Grace said finally. "I deserve that much." Marcus leaned back on the sofa, considering how much to reveal. "Vincent Rossi broke the rules tonight. There are codes in our world. Unwritten, but absolute. You don't target civilians. You don't threaten children. He did both, which means he's either desperate or stupid. Probably both. So what happens now? Now I make it clear that actions have consequences. Vincent wants a war, but he's not strong enough to fight me alone. That's why he's building alliances with the Russians and the cartel. But alliances are fragile things. They're built on mutual benefit, and they crumble when the cost gets too high." Grace processed this. "You're going to turn his allies against him. I'm going to make them realize that backing Vincent is a losing bet." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from his network. "The Kozlov brothers are mercenaries at heart. They'll work with anyone who pays, but they won't die for Vincent. And Mendoza won't risk his cartel's operations in Detroit for a grudge match that doesn't benefit him. How do you know they'll abandon him? Because I'm going to offer them something better." Marcus looked up, his eyes hard. "Information, territory, money, whatever it takes to make them walk away. And once Vincent's alone, he's finished." Grace was quiet for a moment, absorbing the calculated cruelty of it all. "And if they don't walk away? If they decide you're the bigger threat? Then I go to war with all of them." Marcus said it simply, like he was discussing the weather. "But I don't think it'll come to that. Vincent made a mistake tonight. He showed weakness by targeting you instead of me directly. That tells everyone watching that he's afraid, that he can't beat me in a straight fight. Fear is contagious in my world. Once it starts, it spreads. Grace shook her head slowly. This is insane. You're talking about manipulating criminal organizations, starting and preventing wars. All because I slipped a note into your pocket. You did more than that. Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense. You exposed a plot to kill me. You gave me the advantage. And in my world, advantage is everything. Without that note, I'd be dead and Vincent would be consolidating power right now. Instead, he's scrambling, making desperate moves, alienating potential allies. You changed the game, Grace, whether you meant to or not. I didn't want any of this. Her voice cracked slightly. I just wanted to do the right thing. Save a life. Now my daughter's in hiding, my home's destroyed, and I'm sitting in a safe house with a man who kills people for a living. Marcus felt that crack in her voice like a physical blow. He'd brought so much pain into so many lives over the years that he'd become numb to it. But Grace's pain was different. It was pure, undeserved, the collateral damage of a good deed in a bad world. I know, he said quietly, and I'm sorry. If I could undo this, put you back in your apartment like none of this ever happened, I would. But we're here now, and the only way forward is through. Grace wiped at her eyes, frustrated with herself for showing weakness. How long have you been doing this, living this life? 15 years. Started when I was 23, fresh out of prison for a robbery I didn't commit. Came out angry with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Found people who saw potential in that anger, who taught me how to channel it. 5 years later, I was running my own crew. 10 years later, I controlled half of Detroit. Now, he gestured around the safe house. The empire invisible but ever present. Now I'm here. Do you have family? People who know the real you? Marcus's expression darkened. My mother died while I was in prison. Sister moved to California, changed her name, wanted nothing to do with me. Can't say I blame her. This life doesn't leave room for family. Everyone you care about becomes a target, a weakness to exploit. So you learn not to care. That sounds lonely. It's survival. Grace met his eyes, and for a moment the walls between them, the criminal and the civilian, the monster and the innocent, seemed thinner. Maybe that's what's wrong with your world. You've all forgotten how to care, so you just keep hurting each other in an endless cycle. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from one of his lieutenants. Meeting confirmed. Kozlov Brothers, Midnight Warehouse District. They want to talk. Marcus stood, his mind already shifting back into combat mode. I need to go. There's a meeting I can't miss. The Russians? Grace asked, standing as well. Yeah. First step in pulling Vincent's support out from under him. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. Darius will be here all night, and there are 4 men outside. You're safe. If anything happens, I call you. I know. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. Marcus? He turned back. Be careful. I didn't save your life just so you could throw it away in some warehouse. Something in her voice, concern, genuine and unexpected, made Marcus's chest tighten. When was the last time someone had cared whether he lived or died? When was the last time it mattered to anyone beyond the criminal empire that would crumble without him? I'll be careful, he said. And for the first time in years, he meant it. The warehouse was in the industrial district where shipping containers stacked like metal mountains, and the Detroit River lapped against concrete piers. Marcus arrived with Darius and 3 other men, all armed, all ready for betrayal. In this world, meetings could turn into massacres in seconds, and trust was a currency no one could afford. The Kozlov brothers were already there, Alexei and Dmitri, both in their 40s, built like tanks, and twice as mean. They'd emigrated from Moscow 15 years ago and carved out territory on Detroit's west side through sheer brutality. They weren't subtle, but they were effective. Marcus Daniels, Alexei said, his accent thick but his English precise. You called this meeting. Talk. Marcus stepped forward, his posture relaxed but his mind calculating every angle. Vincent Rossi tried to kill me 3 days ago. Poison. When that failed, he attacked a civilian under my protection, a woman and her child. He's getting sloppy, desperate. Dmitri spat on the concrete. What does this have to do with us? You met with Vincent yesterday. He's trying to build an alliance against me. I want to know what he offered you. The brothers exchanged glances. Alexei shrugged. Territory on the east side. 20% of your distribution network. Cash up front. And you believed him? Marcus laughed, cold and sharp. Vincent doesn't have the resources to deliver any of that. He's bleeding money from the failed arms deal, and his Italian connections are starting to question his competence. He's selling you a fantasy. Perhaps, Alexei said carefully, but he also says you're weak. that you're distracted, protecting some woman instead of protecting your empire. That makes him wonder if it's time for new leadership in Detroit. Marcus felt the threat hanging in the air like a blade. This was the moment. Convince them or fight them. Vincent's right about one thing. I am protecting someone, but not because I'm weak, because Vincent crossed a line that even animals know not to cross. He threatened a child. In our world, that's suicide. Dmitri frowned. Why do you care about one child? Because today it's one child, tomorrow it's 10. Next week, it's anyone who gets in the way. Marcus's voice was hard, uncompromising. If we let Vincent normalize attacking civilians, attacking families, then we're all targets. Your families become leverage. Your people become collateral. That's not the world I'm building. The brothers were silent, processing this. Marcus pressed his advantage. I'm offering you something better than Vincent's fantasies. Work with me, help me isolate him, and I'll give you the West Side pharmaceutical distribution. Exclusive. 10% increase over your current revenue, guaranteed. Plus, you get the satisfaction of knowing you backed the right horse. And if we say no, Alexei asked, then you're choosing to go to war with me for a man who's already lost. Your choice. But choose wisely, because there's no coming back from this. The silence stretched, tense, and dangerous. Then Alexei smiled, cold, calculating, but genuine. You make good point, Marcus. Vincent is, how do you say, liability. We take your deal. Marcus extended his hand and Alexei shook it. The pact sealed in the way of their world, binding and absolute. Smart choice. As Marcus drove away from the warehouse, Darius spoke. That went better than expected. Vincent's foundation is cracking, Marcus said. By tomorrow, Mendoza will hear about the Kozlovs backing out. He'll do the same. And then Vincent's alone. What then? Marcus's expression was grim. Then I finish this, once and for all. But as he said it, his mind drifted back to the safe house, to Grace, sitting in the living room trying to process a world she never wanted to understand, to Lily, sleeping upstairs clutching her stuffed rabbit. He'd promised to keep them safe, and Marcus Daniels always kept his promises, even if it cost him everything. Dawn broke over Bloomfield Hills in shades of amber and rose, the kind of peaceful morning that felt obscene given the violence brewing beneath the surface. Marcus hadn't slept. He'd returned to the safe house at 3 a.m. He checked the perimeter with his security team, then sat in the darkened living room watching the shadows shift as night gave way to day. His mind wouldn't stop calculating, analyzing, preparing for what came next. Vincent Rossi was cornered now. The Kozlov brothers had publicly distanced themselves, citing philosophical differences in a terse statement that echoed through the underworld grapevine. Carlos Mendoza had followed suit within hours, withdrawing his cartel's support and canceling a planned shipment that would have bolstered Vincent's cash reserves. In 48 hours, Marcus had systematically dismantled Vincent's coalition, leaving the Italian boss isolated and vulnerable. But wounded animals were the most dangerous. Marcus heard footsteps on the stairs, soft, hesitant. Grace appeared in the doorway, wearing the same jeans and sweatshirt from the night before, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked exhausted but alert, her eyes finding him in the dim room. Couldn't sleep either? She asked quietly. Sleep's a luxury I can't afford right now. Marcus gestured to the sofa. Lily okay? Still sleeping? She had nightmares, but I stayed with her until she settled. Grace sat down, maintaining a careful distance between them. I heard you come in late. The meeting with the Russians. Did it work? Yeah. Vincent's alone now. His allies abandoned him. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Which means he's going to make a desperate move soon. Desperate men do stupid things. Grace absorbed this. In the growing light, Marcus could see the toll the past few days had taken. The lines of stress around her eyes, the tension in her jaw. But there was something else too. A resilience that hadn't broken despite everything thrown at her. What's the endgame here? Grace asked. When does this stop being my life? When Vincent's neutralized. Either he backs down publicly, admits he overstepped and pays restitution, or Marcus trailed off. Or you kill him. Grace said it flatly, not a question. I'd prefer the first option. Less messy, less likely to spark retaliation from his remaining crew. But Vincent's proud. He might choose to go down fighting rather than submit. And if he does? If he keeps coming? Grace's voice was steady, but Marcus heard the fear underneath. What happens to Lily and me? Do we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next Vincent Rossi to decide we're a threat? It was a fair question, one Marcus had been wrestling with himself. The truth was, Grace had seen too much, knew too much. She was a loose end in a world that didn't tolerate loose ends. The practical solution would be to ensure her silence permanently, not through violence but through leverage, control, integration into his organization. But looking at her now, seeing the fierce independence and moral clarity that had driven her to save a stranger's life, Marcus knew that solution would destroy everything that made Grace who she was. "You go back to your life," Marcus said finally. "Your apartment's being repaired. New windows, new locks, upgraded security system. Your job at the daycare, your catering work, all of it continues. Vincent will be a bad memory, and you'll never hear from me again unless you choose to." Grace studied him skeptically. "Just like that? You let us walk away? Just like that? Why don't I believe you?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Because you're smart, and you know my world doesn't work that way." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "But I'm making it work that way. For you. Consider it part of the debt I owe." Before Grace could respond, Marcus's phone erupted with incoming messages, a cascade of alerts that made his blood run cold. He read quickly, his jaw tightening with each line. "What is it?" Grace asked, reading his body language. "Vincent just hit 3 of my operations simultaneously. A warehouse in River Rouge, a distribution center downtown, and a gambling house on the east side. Coordinated attacks, military precision." Marcus was already on his feet, typing rapidly. "He's burning everything down. If he can't have Detroit, he's making sure no one else can either." "How many people?" 12 dead so far, 20 injured. The numbers hit Marcus like physical blows. These were his people, men and women who'd worked for him, trusted him to keep them safe, and Vincent had slaughtered them out of spite and desperation. Darius burst through the front door, his face flushed with adrenaline and rage. "Boss, we need to move. Vincent's declaring open war. He's got mercenaries, professionals, not his usual crew. This is scorched earth." Marcus's mind raced. Vincent had clearly planned this as a final gambit, hiring outside muscle with whatever resources he had left. It was suicide, but it was effective suicide. Maximum damage before the inevitable fall. "Where is he?" Marcus demanded. "Intelligence says he's holed up at his compound in Grosse Pointe, fortified, at least 20 men on site, and he's expecting us to come." Darius glanced at Grace, then back to Marcus. "This is the moment. We end this today or it never ends." Marcus nodded slowly. The time for strategy and manipulation was over. Vincent had made this personal, had forced Marcus's hand. Now it came down to the oldest law of their world. Violence answered with violence. Blood paid with blood. "Get everyone, full assault team, we move in 2 hours." Marcus turned to Grace. "You stay here. Don't leave this house for any reason." "Understood." But Grace was shaking her head, her expression horrified. "You're going to attack his home? Marcus, you'll be killed. He's waiting for you. You said so yourself. This is exactly what he wants. I don't have a choice." Marcus's voice was hard, final. "He killed my people. If I don't respond, I look weak. Every crew in the city will think they can take shots at me without consequences. This ends today. Then it ends with your death." Grace stood, moving closer, her eyes blazing with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite identify. "You promised Lily you'd keep us safe. How do you do that if you're dead in some mansion in Grosse Pointe? Darius will protect you." "I don't want Darius. I want—" Grace stopped herself, seemingly surprised by her own vehemence. She took a breath, steadying herself. "I want you to be smart about this. There has to be another way." Marcus felt something shift inside him, a crack in the armor he'd built over 15 years. Grace wasn't just another civilian caught in the crossfire anymore. Somewhere between the warning note and the shattered window, between the late-night conversations and the promise to a 7-year-old girl, she'd become something more, something that mattered in a way that terrified him. "There isn't another way," he said quietly. "This is what I am, Grace. This is what I do. I hurt people who hurt me. I eliminate threats. It's how I've survived, how I've built everything. I can't change that, not even for—" He stopped, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. Grace stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell her shampoo, could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. Not even for what? The moment hung between them, charged with something dangerous and unexpected. Marcus had built his life on control, on never letting anyone close enough to matter. But Grace had slipped past his defenses without even trying, had made him care about something beyond power and survival. "For someone who makes me want to be different," he admitted, the words costing him more than any bullet ever had. Grace's breath caught. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then her hand reached up, touching his face gently, and Marcus felt the simple human contact like an electric shock. "Then be different," she whispered. "Find another way. Not for me, not for Lily, but for yourself. Because this path you're on, it only ends one way, Marcus. And I don't want to watch you die trying to prove you're the strongest monster in a city full of monsters." Marcus closed his eyes, letting himself feel her touch, the warmth and care in it. How long had it been since anyone had touched him with kindness instead of fear or calculation? How long since he'd allowed himself to be vulnerable, even for a moment? But reality crashed back in as Darius cleared his throat awkwardly. "Boss, we're running out of time. Vincent's people are mobilizing. If we're going to do this..." Marcus opened his eyes, gently taking Grace's hand from his face and holding it for just a moment before letting go. "Give me 10 minutes. I need to think." Darius nodded and left, leaving Marcus and Grace alone again. Marcus walked to the window, staring out at the peaceful suburban street where kids would soon be riding bikes and neighbors would wave to each other in blissful ignorance of the war being waged in their city's shadows. "What if I told you," Grace said from behind him, "that there's someone who might be able to help? Someone Vincent would listen to?" Marcus turned. "Who?" Grace bit her lip, clearly wrestling with something. "When I was working that catering job at the Velvet Room, before I overheard the plot to poison you, I saw Vincent with someone. A woman, older, elegant, clearly important to him. The way he looked at her, the way he softened when she spoke. I think she might be his mother." Marcus's mind immediately began calculating the implications. Francesca Rossi, Vincent's mother. I've heard of her. She's old-school Italian, came over from Sicily in the 70s. Supposedly retired from the life, but everyone knows she still has Vincent's ear. "If you could get to her," Grace said carefully, "maybe she could convince him to stand down. Mother to son. It's not weakness if he's honoring his mother's wishes." It was brilliant. In Italian criminal culture, mothers held a sacred position, their word carrying weight that transcended business or ego. If Francesca Rossi ordered her son to end this war, Vincent would have a face-saving way to back down. No surrender, no admission of defeat, just a son respecting his mother's desires. But there was a problem. Francesca's been untouchable for decades. No one approaches her without invitation. She's protected by tradition as much as by Vincent's men. I can't just knock on her door. "No," Grace agreed. "But I can." Marcus stared at her. "Absolutely not. Think about it. I'm a civilian, a mother myself. A mother. I can appeal to her as one mother to another, woman to woman. I'm not part of your world, not a threat. She might actually listen to me. Or Vincent might have you killed the moment you show up." Marcus shook his head firmly. "I won't risk you like that. You're already risking me by going to war with Vincent. At least this way, there's a chance no one else has to die." Grace moved closer again, her voice urgent. "Marcus, I saved your life once. Let me help save it again. Let me try." Every instinct Marcus had screamed to refuse, to lock Grace in this safe house and go handle Vincent the only way he knew how, with bullets and blood. But those same instincts had been leading him down a path that ended in either death or emptiness, ruling an empire with no one to share it with, no purpose beyond the next threat. Maybe it was time to trust someone else's instincts for a change. "If I agree to this," Marcus said slowly, "you don't go alone. I come with you, stay close but out of sight. At the first sign of trouble, we're gone. Non-negotiable." Grace nodded. "Okay. When?" "Now. Before Vincent's next move. Before this escalates beyond any chance of control." Marcus pulled out his phone, already making arrangements. "Darius, change of plans. We're taking a different approach." As he spoke, Marcus felt Grace's hand slip into his, a gesture of support, of solidarity, of something he didn't have a name for yet. He squeezed gently, acknowledging it, and for the first time in days, he felt something other than the cold certainty of violence. He felt hope. Francesca Rossi lived in a restored Victorian mansion in the historic district of Grosse Pointe, a neighborhood where old money met older traditions. The house was painted cream with dark green trim, surrounded by a wrought iron fence and meticulously maintained gardens. It looked like the home of a respectable widow, not the mother of a mob boss. Marcus parked 2 houses down, watching through tinted windows as Grace walked up the front path. She'd changed into a simple dress, respectful, but not formal, and carried herself with quiet dignity. Darius and 3 other men were positioned around the block, ready to intervene if needed. But Marcus's eyes never left Grace, tracking every step, every breath. She knocked on the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then it opened, revealing an older woman in her 70s, small but regal, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Francesca Rossi. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the intelligence in her eyes, the steel beneath the grandmother exterior. Grace spoke. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he saw Francesca's expression shift from suspicion to curiosity. She gestured, inviting Grace inside. The door closed, and Marcus could only wait, every second stretching into eternity, praying that Grace's courage and compassion would be enough to stop a war that had already claimed too many lives. Inside Francesca Rossi's home, Grace stood in a parlor that smelled of espresso and old wood. The elderly woman gestured to a velvet chair, her eyes sharp despite her age. "You have courage coming here," Francesca said, her accent thick but her English clear. "Tell me why I shouldn't call my son right now." Grace met her gaze steadily. "Because I'm a mother like you, and I'm asking you to stop this before more mothers lose their sons." Francesca's expression flickered. "You know what Vincent did? The attacks? I know he's afraid. I know Marcus Daniels has taken everything from him. His allies, his power, his pride. But Mrs. Rossi, your son crossed a line. He threatened my daughter, a 7-year-old girl who never hurt anyone." The older woman's face hardened. "Vincent would never—" "He threw a brick through her bedroom window with a death threat attached." Grace's voice cracked. "I saved Marcus's life because it was the right thing to do. Your son tried to kill us for it. What kind of man does that make him?" Francesca was silent, her hands trembling slightly. Grace pressed on, pulling out her phone and showing a photo of Lily sleeping, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "This is my daughter. She has nightmares now. She's afraid to sleep in her own bed. Is this the legacy you want for your son? A man who terrorizes children?" A tear slipped down Francesca's weathered cheek. "I raised him better than this. His father would be ashamed." "Then help me end this," Grace pleaded. "Call Vincent. Tell him to stand down, to make peace. Marcus will accept terms, territory, money, whatever it takes. But this war has to stop before everyone loses everything." Francesca studied Grace for a long moment, seeing not a criminal or a threat, but a mother protecting her child. Finally, she nodded. "Wait here." She disappeared into another room. Grace heard muffled conversation, Francesca's voice rising in Italian, commanding, maternal, brooking no argument. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Francesca returned, her expression weary but resolute. "It's done. Vincent will meet with Marcus tomorrow, neutral ground. They will negotiate terms." She paused. "You were right to come. Sometimes it takes a mother to remind a son of his humanity." Outside, Marcus saw Grace emerge from the house, and the tension that had coiled through his body released all at once. She walked down the path with her head high, and when she reached the car, she was smiling, exhausted but triumphant. "She agreed," Grace said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Vincent's going to negotiate." Marcus stared at her, something like wonder crossing his face. "You did it. You actually did it. We did it." Grace reached over, taking his hand. Together. The next evening, Marcus met Vincent Rossi in a private room at a downtown hotel. Two men who'd been ready to kill each other now sat across a table, surrounded by lawyers and witnesses. The negotiation was tense, but productive. Vincent would cede territory on the east side, pay restitution for the attacks, and publicly acknowledge the truce. In return, Marcus would allow Vincent to maintain his remaining operations without interference. It wasn't friendship, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was peace. When Marcus returned to the safe house, he found Grace packing. Lily was drawing at the kitchen table, humming softly. "You're leaving," Marcus said, though it wasn't really a question. "We're going home, the apartment's ready, and Lily needs to get back to school to normal life." Grace zipped the duffel bag, then turned to face him. "Thank you, Marcus, for keeping your promise." Marcus nodded slowly. "What will you do now?" "Live, raise my daughter, try to forget any of this happened." Grace paused. "What about you?" Marcus thought about his empire, his world of violence and shadows, and he thought about a woman who'd shown him that courage didn't always come from a gun, that strength could be quiet and compassionate. "Maybe I'll try something different," he said, "for someone who makes me want to be better." Grace smiled, understanding in her eyes. She kissed his cheek softly. "Then maybe we'll see each other again, when we're both ready." As Grace and Lily drove away, Marcus stood watching until the taillights disappeared. The war was over. The debt was paid. But something new had begun. Something neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to explore when the time was right. For now, that was enough.